Hey everybody, it's Dooley1999 here. Got a new microphone, so hopefully it'll make videos, or these videos I'm rolling out a bit nicer and easier to understand. But without further ado, I'm going to teach you guys how to make a basic diesel engine setup. A lot of players have gotten on the server lately. I know it says there's only 4, but there's actually much more people on the other servers. But we've had a large influx of players who are asking questions on how to build a diesel and boiler engine. And in this video, I'll be covering how to make a diesel engine. So you can see here, I've built a hull. It's hollow. There's nothing to it other than, just the hull. And this is kind of like one of the best times you can put a hull on an engine in a ship. It's much easier to do engines when you haven't done the rooms around the engines. Don't wait till last to do engines. Otherwise, things are going to get a bit complicated. So we're going to make a diesel engine. So there's a few blocks you're going to need. You're going to need the lapis lazuli. That's kind of your main engine block. You can use black glazed terracotta right here, and you can use either of these valve blocks, the grindstone or the stone cutter. You can use any of these blocks to actually build the engine itself. Now, something that's important to know with a diesel engine is a diesel engine is a standalone unit. You have a diesel that hooks up to a drive shaft, and that's pretty much it. That's like all a diesel needs to run. That and an air shaft, but we'll get to that in a bit. There's nothing really necessary other than the diesel structure itself. So for a small ship like this, so one of these lapis engine or valve blocks will make 70 it's either 70 or 80. I think it's 70 kilowatts. Yeah, sorry. One of these blocks will make 70 kilowatts. So when you're building an engine, it's important to, you don't really need to know this, but it's something good to remember. I'm going to go ahead and place down a sign here so we can get numbers as we build these engines. So something important also to know when you're building a diesel engine is how many propellers do you want to have. For this ship, let's go ahead and use we need a drive shaft and bone block. So let's go ahead and put our props where we want them. This ship's a bit boxier than many of mine. I kind of whipped up this hull in a few minutes, but we're gonna just stick the props right through here. And we're gonna get our drive shaft, and we're gonna stick the props about to about here. There we go. The reason it's important to get your propellers oriented to where you want them is because your propellers are going to dictate how many diesel engines you have. So if you're going to have 2 propellers, you have to have 2 separate diesel engines to power the propellers. So let's go ahead and divert these to the side just because I want to maximize room for my engines, right? So let's go ahead and again, with the diesel, each block you add is adding power. So the bigger the engine, the more power it's gonna make. But at the same time, that's adding weight, and that's also gonna make the engine less and less fuel efficient. So it's gonna guzzle way more fuel the bigger the engine gets. And something important to note is that just because your engine's bigger by like a lot, this engine is twice as big as this one, but if I were to have 2 of these on the ship, that does not necessarily mean that those will make the ship go twice as fast. That just means that there's twice the power. There's a there's a few things to consider when also making these engines, is that you put them somewhere safe in the ship. You don't really want your engines to be above the waterline, because that can put them at risk of gunfire. They're usually pretty safe below the waterline. So I mentioned these blocks earlier, these alternate engine blocks. These will also contribute to the size of the engine, but these are cool because the valves, they animate when the engine is on, and they make a little smoke effect too when they're running. Now, if you don't want to use this lapis block for whatever reason, you can swap them out with the black glazed terracotta, or you can use both, or whatever. This was sort of modeled after a U-boat diesel engine, so if you want to kind of have a realistic looking U-boat engine, you can kind of get that out of using this block. So making sure our engines are hooked up right here. This is not hooked up, right, because this is a diagonal connection and those don't count. However, this is a face-to-face connection, so you got a face there attaching to that face, and these connect the engine to the drive shaft with a direct face like that. Now is another important part is the signs for each of these diesels. So you're gonna want to write diesel on the top line to designate that this is a diesel engine, and you can number it if you want. You don't have to number it, but it makes sense to number them. Diesel 1 and Diesel 2. It's important to leave the lower lines blank, just because there's not really any need to write anything on there. It's going to go away when the ship's all of the sign stuff is just going to turn into a gauge cluster when the ship is active. So let's go ahead and run a scan and see what it tells us. So right there, diesel, max horsepower 1260. Diesel 2, number 2, max horsepower 1260. So that's just an easy way to gauge how much power you're going to put out with each engine. Now, the thing is, you may think you're done, right? Like, cool, I'm done. But if you were to like block this off, for instance, like if you were to cover this, you put your ship's deck in, and you seal up this top, your diesel engine can't breathe. So it's important to route the diesel exhaust with a air/steam shaft. Now, these can attach to any of these blocks here, so I could have it there, even though there's a visual gap there. They're technically attached. I can have them here. I can literally put it anywhere. I could even put it there, and it will work fine. We're gonna go ahead and put them on the outside here. We're gonna route them. Now, anybody who's seen most ships anyways, so they have a smokestack, right? So what you're gonna want to do is you could route these whatever way you want. In fact, let's just do that just to make it different. Let's go ahead and do this, and you have one steam shaft and another. It's important to cap off your stacks with those blocks on the very top. Now that is how you build a diesel. Now, if you are, say for example that this is a submarine, I know it's on a ship hull, but let's pretend that this is on a submarine. What do we do to make a submarine engine? Because submarines oftentimes use what's called a diesel electric setup, and there's 2 ways you can go about with a diesel electric setup. So what you want to do is you would want to, let's go ahead and use world edit, and push these engines forward because we need room for a motor. Now, motors, any of you guys who know much about submarines, you know that submarines have motors, electric motors. And basically, this is all you gotta do to make it work. So a motor is just another type of engine, but I'm putting it in this video because they hook up to diesels. So let's do motor 1 and motor 2. Motors don't need exhaust. They're electric. So instead of using gas on a ship, they're going to use batteries. So like how it's important to have fuel on your ship when you have a diesel engine, if you're going to have a motor, you're going to want to make sure you store some batteries on your ship, because when the ship's underwater or the submarine's underwater, you can't use your diesel engines to charge your motors, right? You have to use whatever battery and electrical storage is on the ship to propel the ship or sub through the water. Now, motors do work on ships and subs, so you don't have to use them on a ship if you don't want to, or on just submarines if you don't want to. You could put a motor on your ship if you really wanted to. However, there's no way to charge a motor back up if you do not have a diesel engine or a diesel generator. So, and I'll get to diesel generators here in a second. So, this right here is a very traditional setup right here. It looks like when I world edited this, my signs went away. There. So this is like a basic submarine setup where you have two motors, or two diesel engines connecting to two motors, which are running to each propeller shaft. And that would work for a submarine. Now, there's another method that some players will use called a, I think it's a diesel electric setup. I can't remember which one's a direct diesel, and which ones are diesel electric, but they're very similar. Now, if for whatever reason you want to like build these like elsewhere on your ship, like you can't attach them to your propellers, or for some reason you just don't want to, you can turn these engines into what are called diesel generators. So instead of writing diesel, you'll write diesel gen on that top line. And I didn't mention this when I had them hooked up to the motors, but you do still need an air shaft for diesel engines and diesel generators. No matter what, you have to have them vent somewhere using the air shaft and air intake blocks. So basically, a diesel generator just allows you to have your diesel engines separate from the motors themselves. So these will function exactly the same, except there's some distance here, there's space, and excuse me, leaves a bit more up to you. But that's gonna conclude the diesel engines tutorial. They're the most basic of engines in game. So however, they're not exactly the most powerful. You start putting these up on making really big diesels, and they're nowhere near as powerful as boilers of about the same size will be. But they are a good entry-level engine, and they work well for like PT boats and stuff. Because unlike boilers, diesels don't explode when compromised. They just kind of stop working. So that's that. But I hope to see you guys in more of these videos. I'm gonna try to do a boiler tutorial video pretty soon here. It's gonna be set up very similar to this one. But yeah, I'll see you guys in future videos, and I really hope the microphone quality was better this video, because I know the background noise was pretty bad with the old one. Not only that, but you had to pretty much crank your volume all the way up to hear what I was saying. But hopefully we're good now. And yeah, I'll see you guys in future uploads.